Oh, hey everybody. Welcome back to session 2 of the United Methodist Social Principles. Let's see if we've got people joining us in live.hydeparkumc.org. At this point, we have 11 people. Awesome. So funny story, 4 of the scariest words that an AV person can hear 10 minutes before an event is, quote, "I have a video." And even scarier would be a 6-letter phrase of "I have a video with audio," because getting audio in and out of video to actually go sit through an audio system is one of the hardest things to do. Anyways, your boy did it. So in the event today, we will have a video that will play. Go ahead and comment in the chat if you don't hear audio. The only downside is we're on about a 30-second delay, so by the time you don't hear audio, we might be cooked. Cooked, by the way, is a phrase that my kids use when it's not going to go well. All that to say, I'm so excited we got 12 of you joining us today. I see in the chat we've got Tom, Doretha, Rocco. Other people I see are Patty. Hey, Patty, what's up? Susan as well. Wow, my wife just texted me that our bearded dragon's fly larva hatched into flies. Yep, that's what happens when you keep fly larvae in your house for a reptile. Oops. Anyways, you guys probably didn't hear that part. Would we bless flies, by the way, for a pet blessing? I think not. Okay, I think Magrey is about to start, so I'm gonna go to Magrey. You don't need to hear any more about my pets. Coming to one Magrey deVega, Senior Pastor of Hyde Park United Methodist Church. Oh, real quick. I'm Matt Hotho, the Director of Production and Online Engagement at Hyde Park United Methodist Church. If you're joining us for the first time, I'm so glad you're with us for session 2 of the United Methodist Revised Social Principles, and we're gonna get started. Here we go, I think. You can also download a copy of the Revised Social Principles in the notes if you're watching on hydeparkumc.org/live. Here we go.
Well, welcome back, everybody. It is good to have you back for session 2 of this social principles experience together. Glad that you all came back for a second session. In fact, I think there's some folks who are new this week who weren't here last week. We had a wonderful first crowd last Wednesday. We had 65 total people, between the 40 here in the chapel and 25 online. My thanks again to Matt Hotho, who not only technologically set us all up for this space, but is also live hosting with the number of folks who are on the chat. How many folks are online right now, Matt?
I don't know the full number, but somewhere around 20.
Oh, wow. Oh, somewhere around 20 folks already. At this pace, there'll be more people online than in person, but now what are we going to do about that? But that's just great. For those online, it looks like we have another great crowd here in the chapel, probably about 25 or 30 folks by my count. Never trust the preacher count. I think there's about 75 people here in the chapel. And just as we get started, some folks observed who were sitting near the back last time that it might be helpful, if you want to sort of naturally move toward the front for a couple reasons. One is, in case you have any trouble seeing the screen or scanning the QR code, sitting closer to the front might be helpful. But also, as you noticed last week, we had some times for turning to each other, groups of 2 or 3 or 4. And when folks are all spread out here in the chapel, given that we're all in pews, it's just easier if we're sitting closer together. So if you all want to huddle up a little bit as you're sitting, maybe move toward the front. That's entirely up to you. But we are grateful to be here in the chapel, such a beautiful and comfortable space for a setting like this, to get into the material for the night. And before we go any further, I thought I would offer a word of prayer for us together. God, we thank you for the ongoing witness and work of the church that calls us to make a difference in our local communities, in our country, and around the world. We thank you that you have given us the resources for this work, the work of your Holy Spirit that breathes new insights into your scriptures, and the tools for looking into those sacred texts of tradition and experience and reason. But most of all, through earnest, thoughtful dialogue with each other, knowing that not one person, not one group, has the monopoly on all truth, but together, as the body of Christ, we discern this work together following the impulse of your Spirit. It culminates together in the social principles that we are so pleased to study tonight. Unlock within them new insights for us, that they might be both instructive and persuasive, to continue your work and witness throughout the world. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. We hope since last Wednesday you've had a bit of time to percolate over what we introduced last week about the nature and the purpose of the social principles. And maybe you were in worship or watched online last Sunday where I did pretty much a full sermon on the social principles. And I will say the response to last Sunday's sermon was very generous, including some longtime United Methodists who didn't know we had a social principles. And I don't know if that pertains to any of you lifelong Methodists, but for many folks it was just a pleasant surprise that we have a collection of stances that have been really part of our denomination since 1972. So I hope that you've had a chance to not only percolate over what we talked about last week, but to do some reading. You've noticed that it's not a long document, longer than maybe you expect, but the readings for tonight were really only just a handful of pages, and we'll certainly have some time tonight to have some large group discussion as well as some small group discussion about both the economic community and the social community. Sections 2 and 3 of the social principles are what constitutes our agenda for tonight. But before we do any kind of large discussion, John and I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking a little bit more about this last year, the revised social principles, the most widespread and comprehensive revision to our document, the social principles, in over 50 years. I touched on this in the introduction last week, that even though the social principles has been part of us since 1972, the changes have been sort of tweaks, additions, deletions, but not at all the kind of widespread change that we saw a year ago in Charlotte, North Carolina, back in April. So what we're going to do is show you a video of 3 delegates from the Florida Conference, one of whom we have here, so I'm very grateful for you, Clark, who will give us an insider look into what happened last year when we made a historic revision to the social principles. We're not going to watch all of it. We'll watch the parts that are pertaining to the economic and the social communities, but we'll begin with a general introduction of the 3 individuals who are representing the Florida Conference in those 3 committees. Before we do, I want to give you just a couple glossary terms, because they're going to share with you some terminology that might get a little mixed up if you're not into United Methodist speak. And even after 28 years of ministry, I'm still confused sometimes by the terminology. So that we can track what it is that Esther and Clark and Sharon are saying in the video, a couple key terms. The General Conference, which I touched on last week, is the chief voice of all United Methodists. In this case, there were about 850, 900 or so delegates from all around the world who gathered for General Conference to vote on the changes that are now part of the revised social principles. That's the biggest body that they refer to. Out of Florida, there were 8 clergy and 8 lay delegates. Clark was one, I was another one, and there were 6 other clergy and 8 other laity. And that comprised United Methodists around the world for the 850 so delegates. The 3 people you're going to see in the video are Florida clergy delegates. They all happen to be clergy. There's another board that you're going to hear about that Sharon Austin was a part of called the General Board of Church and Society. The General Board of Church and Society is one of the general boards or agencies of the United Methodist Church that spearhead a lot of important work on behalf of the whole denomination, even in between general conferences. There's a General Board of Discipleship, there's a General Board of Higher Education and Ministry, there's a General Board of Pensions, there's a number of general boards and agencies. When you hear the phrase General Board of Church and Society, you'll be hearing about Sharon being a member of that as the secretary for that board, and they were the ones who spearheaded. They were the heavy lifters of the major revision to the social principles. They took up the charge that was given to them in 2012 here in Tampa to work on a revised social principles. They took on that challenge, and they engaged, what Clark will say in the video, literally thousands of United Methodists all around the world. I think you say 4,000 people. So this was not just Sharon and a board, the General Board of Church and Society, coming up with stuff to present. They did heavy listening. And they did it in a compact amount of time. 8 years is not a lot of time to come up with what became a wholesale document change like what you have. And of course, you know, it was delayed 4 more years because of COVID. So 12 years later, the General Board of Church and Society, of which Sharon Austin is a part, produced the document to the General Conference. I say that because General Board of Church and Society is different from the Church and Society legislative committees. And that's what you're going to hear a lot of in this video. Legislative committees are the small working groups in General Conference. So you take 850 or 900 United Methodists around the world, and all of them would be working in one of 14 legislative committees. And they all have different parts of legislation that they're working on to pass or approve. My legislative committee, for example, was called Faith and Order, which takes United Methodist belief and connects it with United Methodist practice. And so we tackled all sorts of things about Methodist theology, ecumenical relationships, ordination. In fact, it's our legislative committee, Faith and Order, that brought to the floor and had passed the major headline-grabbing legislation that ended the prohibition against gay and lesbian persons from being ordained clergy. That came out of Faith and Order. So each of the 14 legislative committees has different tracks depending on the substance or the content of their legislation. The Revised Social Principles was such a massive, massive document that the legislative committee called Church and Society actually had 3 legislative committees. So you have Church and Society 1, Church and Society 2, and Church and Society 3. And so when they introduce themselves, they're going to say, I was on Church and Society 1, or Church and Society 2, Church and Society 3. That refers to the legislative committee. When Dr. Sharon Austin introduces herself, she will say, I'm also the secretary of the General Board of Church and Society. This is all to say, you're going to hear a lot of phrases, church and societies, church and society, church and society. And I just, in case you're interested, just to keep all of this language straight. And this is important so that you can track what's really cool about what they're going to share. Now, the whole video is 24 minutes long. We're not going to watch all 24 minutes in one setting, because as it so turns out, when they present pretty much in the blocks that we're tackling in this 3-week class. So we'll watch the first 10 minutes because they're doing some general sort of introductory stuff. Then we'll skip ahead to the last 7 or 8 minutes when Clark talks about his work on Church and Society 1 or 2? 1. Because Clark's Church and Society 1 legislative committee tackled the community of creation, which we talked about last week, creation care, and the economic community, which is first of our 2 sections tonight. So we'll watch Clark's section and then pause the video and get into the slides. John has some things to introduce about the economic community. We'll have a large group discussion about what you read. You'll break up into small groups. We'll reconvene and process all of that, and we'll talk about economic community. Then we'll go backwards in the video to Dr. Sharon Austin, because it's Sharon Austin's legislative committee, Church and Society Legislative Committee 2, that tackled the social community, which is the second of our 2 topics tonight. And she'll give you some really cool background on some of the major changes that happened there, particularly with human sexuality, and we'll follow the same rhythm. I'll give you some background on that one because I was on the floor when that drama unfolded, and it was really cool. And we'll talk about it, large group, small group, large group. And that should constitute our 90 minutes. We will go no longer than 90 minutes. We might even try to land the plane faster and catch a jet stream and be out of here before 90 minutes, but that's sort of the plan for tonight. Any questions? Okay. Clark, I just want to say thank you. Clark Campbell Evans, you all know him. Reverend Clark Campbell Evans is just such a great friend and resource of this church. He's one of the people you're going to see on the video, and when he found out that I was doing this class, he said, I've got a video that you might share. I watched it and yes, this is perfect because this does such a better job than us narrating what happened in Charlotte last year. Okay.
All right, guys, here we go. Comment in the chat if you're not getting video.
Hi, my name is Reverend Esther Rodriguez Perez, and
Sorry?
You can turn off the TV audio. It will come through the house speakers.
Oh, perfect.
Like just play your video, but you can mute the TV.
Mute the TV?
Yep.
Got it. Thank you.
Go.
Amazing. Here we go.
Hi, my name is Reverend Esther Rodriguez Perez, and I serve in Extension Ministry at Hope Partnership in Kissimmee, Florida.
Hi, everybody. I'm Clark Campbell Evans. I'm a clergy member of the Florida Conference, and I currently serve as the District Superintendent for the Northwest District.
My name is Sharon Austin. I am also a Florida Conference clergy person. I serve as the Conference Director of Justice Ministries and the East Central District Superintendent. This is a great opportunity. We're speaking to you from the General Conference of the United Methodist Church. We have been referring to it as the postponed 2020 General Conference, and now we may officially refer to it as the 2024 General Conference. We're meeting in Charlotte, North Carolina, and we have been here for 12 days. We'll be leaving tomorrow, but not after 12 intense days of hard work and significant work that will change the United Methodist Church, we believe, for the better. It will expand our reach and our vision and the inclusion of our church. The three of us served on 3 of the Church of Society legislative teams. Each of us served on one of them, and so you'll hear us share a little bit about the work of Church of Society 1, 2, and 3. Other members of our delegation served on the other legislative teams, and together we had an opportunity to address the work first in small groups of legislative sessions last week, and then to vote on that work this week in the plenary session. So we've been absent from Florida, but very busy in terms of the work you elected us to do as delegates to General Conference. We'd like to begin this conversation by a reference to the social creed. For those who are aware of the social principles, you may think that this is a fairly recent addition to our tradition, to our heritage as United Methodists. And while by the name we know them, they are relatively new, like in the last 50 years, we have a legacy of addressing social conditions, social ills, we might call them, and speaking into the challenges of daily living and those things that reflect injustices or necessary corrections. We can go back at least as far as to 1908 to address the social creed, and if you read it, you will find it both posted in the General Water Church of Society building on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., as well as in our printed material online and in our current social principles, because we want to be reminded of the journey that we have traveled. Certainly, the issues that we addressed in 1908 are somewhat different from the issues that we have addressed in recent years, but some have come back to remind us of the need to continue doing the work. Issues such as child labor, which actually have surfaced again even in our civil discourse and in our state legislature, concerns around the number of hours and the pay and the conditions under which young people work. It seems that the more things change, the more they stay the same, and it's a reminder of the need to be vigilant when it comes to the work of advocacy and justice.
Well, I want to tell all of you how much I frankly love the social witness of our church represented in this part of the discipline. You know, all the rest of the discipline is really speaking to the church, speaking to how we're organized, speaking to kind of the rules that guide us. But this part of the discipline, the social principles, and now, thanks to the hard work of the three of us in our committees, but also the action of the General Conference, we have revised social principles, and those come before us and enable us as the United Methodist Church to speak to the world, to reach out and have a faithful witness on the issues that engage all of us here in the United States and across our globe. I am so grateful to the Board of Church and Society. Dr. Austin serves as a board member and is the secretary to that body, and they have done some phenomenal work over the last 5 years, because this is the first legislation, these revised social principles, to come to General Conference having been vetted across the globe, across the jurisdictions, across the central conferences, and come with over 4,000 people having input before it got to us. And I am just really grateful for the opportunity to have been a part of this. We are now going to turn to speak a little bit about the different legislative committees we were in. And why don't we turn to Esther first to talk.
Has always had the opportunity to determine how they give response if they hold same-sex marriages. That's what I think I need to say about that. And we recommend that churches would work through a process in their local
parts of the social principles that deal with the natural world,
with the full opportunity that all people have who are called by God with this.
I was privileged to serve on Church and Society 1. That legislative committee was dealing with the parts of the social principles that deal with the natural world and the economic community. You know, we live on this lifeboat called planet Earth, and in a time when creation is being threatened by environmental factors and by human action, the social principles point us right at the importance of caring for the creation that God gave us. The economic world that we live in, the economic community that we live in, is threatened at times by economic policies chosen by governments that frankly have a detrimental impact on certain parts of our communities, especially the poor. It has a detrimental impact on parts of the world where poverty engulfs certain communities and speaks to how we can be agents of transformation through our witness throughout the world. We dealt with resolutions that were about to expire that deal with lots of different important issues, and those came to us that we might again vote to continue them in the book of resolution. And when you turn to look at those, you'll see that that all of those that came before us were sustained. This was a great opportunity for us, and I celebrate the work we've been able to do.
I'm so glad Clark mentioned the resolutions, because sometimes people read the social principles and they seek the specificity in greater detail that the resolutions often address in more succinct ways and in more clarifying ways. And so I've often been asked by people, why doesn't the principle address a certain aspect or a certain component of an issue? Well, then when people submit resolutions, they often address those in greater detail, and that's one of the reasons they expire after a period, because sometimes they would not still be relevant because they are more specific. And so we have an opportunity to address the situation and submit new resolutions that help bring clarity and really help to highlight the conversation we're having at the time, which makes, I think, better sense to people when people find them to be more helpful when that occurs. So a question people might now have, now that General Conference
to stop. In a minute, we'll go back and look at Sharon's view of the social community. And the section that she's about to get into is one we will look at next week, which is the so what? What can we do now? And that will constitute much of what we do next week in our third and final week. But let me go back to the slide presentation for a minute. you first arrived. If you would like a copy of the social principles on your device, you can scan the QR code. That'll take you right to the revised social principles. And later on, John's going to talk about an engagement guide, which is what our justice group has been putting together for ways to engage in local justice work here in the community. So that's what the other QR code here is about. I'm going to invite John to come up here in just a moment. He wants to offer some reflections specifically on the economic community. And just so you see the questions that we're going to address together as a large group after he's finished, so that you can be pondering them as he is offering his words. Those will be the questions that are there on the screen. But John, thank you again for motivating me to do this and for putting all of this material together. And he wanted to have some time to talk about the economic community and give us some framework for how to think about it.
Thank you, Magrey. To the point about the engagement guide, it's this, and it has in it all of the contact information for every elected official that represents Hillsborough County in some way or another. And if you're in, there's also one already prepared for Pinellas. If you're in one of the other surrounding counties, let us know. We can probably create one for you. But it also includes a lot of other resources, which are sample letters and a personalized script that you personalize for speaking with elected officials. One of the things, so we had a large event back in March, and I had to ask the speakers specifically to leave everybody with a call to action, and almost to a one it was, you have to be in touch with your elected representatives. And what we heard back from that was a lot of people saying, I know I need to do that, I want to, I never have, it's a little intimidating, I don't know how. So we put this guide together so you don't have an excuse for not reaching out to them. So you can download that, and if the barcodes will come up again, but it's also on the Serve page. The download link for it is on the Serve page on the church website, so you can get it from there anytime. But take a look at that. That was part of the next program we had, which was the one Bill Carlson, somebody a lot of you know, and another person politically active here in the county, came in and talked to us about how to do that. I even did the research on how to track a bill through the legislature and talked about that. That was thrilling stuff, I'll tell you. Yes? So what she said was that she had found the document on the Serve page already on her own, so she's industrious right out of the gate, and she was appreciative of the fact that we had it, and it looks like maybe there might be a small number of them available to pass out, because I see Heidi running in the back door with a handful of stuff. So if you want one, raise your hand, and Heidi will help you out as long as they last. But she had said how helpful it was that was exactly the kind of resource she had been looking for. So please take advantage of that, and thank you very much for saying that. You're my hero tonight. As we get into the economic community, I put together some thoughts. John Wesley wrote that God placed you here not as a proprietor, but a steward. Now, he was talking specifically about money at the time, but he was also really talking about trust, right? Everything we hold, our time, our energy, our possessions, our influence, that's on loan from God. As United Methodists, we always say, all we are and all we possess belong to God, right? I get that right? And so that's not a metaphor, that's accountability. We're held accountable to that. We're answerable for how we use what's been placed in our care, right? Whether that's a paycheck or your talent or your vote. What are the things we always say? Our time, our talent, and our money, our tithes, so, right? So, Wesley lived in an age where there was widening inequality, right? It was the beginning of the industrial age. Wealth was rising, but on the backs of the poor. His sermons about money were really about justice, fair wages, honest trade, the refusal to profit at another's expense. And that same thread runs through our social principles today. Conviction that economics is never morally neutral. Every transaction, every policy, every budget reveals what and whom we value. So the economic community challenges us to see stewardship that we have, not as charity, but as discipleship. How we order our lives so that others might flourish. Pope Francis said it in somewhat more modern terms: an economy of exclusion is an economy that kills. That's a stark reminder that systems without compassion become instruments of harm, right? Wesley put it a little more simply. He said, how many of you have heard this one? Earn all you can, save all you can, give all you can. Anybody heard that before? If you've been around a while, you have. But those aren't separate steps. Those are like a moral rhythm, right? That's effort, restraint, and generosity. So as we step into this section tonight, maybe the question underneath it all is, how do we handle what we've been given in a way that looks like grace? So that's the frame I carry into this evening, not ownership, but stewardship. So I think we want to break into some small groups, is that right? And
yeah, thanks, John. That's really helpful theological framing for this. These aren't just position statements. As I said in my sermon on Sunday, the social principles is not trying to align according to some partisan political platform. I mean, it might read like that just because these are contemporary issues. But we are not trying to espouse some political posturing in these things. These are theological in nature. They're foundational in what we believe about God and ourselves and our relationship to God and each other and all creation. So thank you for that theological framing, particularly in grace. So yeah, in a minute we will invite you to spend some time in small groups to look at the different position statements. But I'm wondering if, before we do that, if anybody here in person or online has any general response to these questions. These are questions that John came up with that are really, really great. What does it mean to be stewards of our financial resources? What does that word steward mean? You hear that a lot in religious language, maybe not so much in wider secular culture. What does it mean to be a steward? How does faith influence our view of wealth and poverty? It's easy to not think about wealth and poverty from a faith perspective. But in the eyes of the Bible, all throughout, it is a theological matter. Wealth and poverty are theological issues. They are not just economic ones. So what does that mean? And how can the church advocate for fair wages and economic equity? What can we do about it? Now again, we'll spend the second half of next week talking about what we can do about all this, but you might have some initial ideas. So I'm wondering if there's any general responses, and Matt, thank you for hosting online. If anybody has any comments, they can type those in the chat, and he will share those. And if any of you want to share, I'll repeat what you share so that our online folks can join us. How many folks do we have online, Matt? 20, still holding strong. Haven't lost anybody yet. This is like a game within a game for me. I want to see if we can hold on to all 20 before the end of the night. Any general thoughts on these ideas before we talk about the positions in particular? Stewardship, faith. How does a church play a role in all this? Okay. I learned from years of facilitating that silence doesn't mean that you all are tuning out. It means you're percolating. Because these aren't easy questions, are they? These aren't just questions about what do we do about stuff. This is, what's our beginning position? to think about this stuff. This is all theological in nature. Okay. So what we're going to invite you to do is break up into groups of 2, 3, or 4, just like we did last week, and take a look at the different positions. You'll see that under the economic community, there are 5 general categories: globalization, poverty and income inequality, human trafficking and slavery. Well, there's a whole bunch. You can read them all there. There's actually 9 different categories under economic challenges and economic justice. I have the full revised social principles to show you on the screen if you all want to reference that as you're talking. I also have, in case you're interested, the pre-2024 social principles, in case you want to see what we said before the massive revision. And I think what you'll find is that by and large, the positions are stronger and clearer and more scripturally based and more theologically grounded. But in terms of the positions themselves, we didn't do massive 180s on any major topics, except for maybe human sexuality. They're just stronger. And as I said last week, the verbs are more imperative. They're more direct. They're more convicted. But if you want to take a look at what they were like before, you can. They're also organized in a much clearer way. You can tell if you look at the pre-2024 social principles, they have like over a dozen different position statements, like little ducks in a row, as if as something new came up in the world, we just added a new statement, then added a new statement, then added a new statement. So one of the things that the committee did was that they grouped it all together in a much more coherent way. So what you have in front of you tonight makes a lot of sense in terms of these categories, so that it's not just one odd position followed by another that doesn't make sense. They're really, really sensible in those things. So what I'm going to invite you to do is break up into groups of 2, 3, or 4. What positions surprised you? What positions reinforced what you believe? Is there something you learned that's new? And just talk through them. What was interesting to you? And then when we get back together in about 15 or 20 minutes, I'll just ask what insights you gained from your small group discussions. All right? Any questions? Okay. It feels like there's more people in here than last week, so this should be easier to make small groups of 2, 3, or 4. All right. Have fun.
All right, guys, we are gonna join a small group as people hop in. Ooh, that's loud. A second. Hold on, guys, I'll be right back. I got you. Hey, Doretha. Welcome. I'm doing great. How are you doing? Oh, y'all sound great. I'm going to see if deVega wants to, the Reverend Magrey deVega wants to host our breakout, but he already just sat down with someone, so that's okay. All right, let's see. Doretha, Rocco. All right, I'm looking to see if anybody else is going to come in, but while we're gathering, oh, I don't like this. I'm going to switch. Hold on one second. One moment. There. Okay, that's better. I was looking into my nice camera, but then I'm not looking at you guys. I'm like looking off to the side. So anyways, y'all can still hear me still? Cool, awesome. Yeah, so this question about, oh, bummer, they're not still up there. But the question about, here we go, he's pulling them up. Okay, cool.
We'll give you all another 5 minutes or so. Another 5 minutes. Okay? So another minute or so, just kind of wind down your conversations, 1 more minute or so, and then we will reconvene. Okay, we appreciate all of the wonderful discussion. I could tell by the energy in the room that you all have really taken to this material and really thought through aspects of our economic life together. I had a great time for about 10 minutes with the online folks. Wonderful spirit and engagement happening online, and some really fruitful conversations. So I'm wondering, as we sort of draw this discussion part to a close, if you take a look at the questions one more time, is there anything that you all talked about in your small groups that you thought was especially insightful or interesting related to this section? And in a minute, I'm going to invite Clark, since he's here, to come up and share his thoughts as well, because he was right in front and center in making all this happen. And Matt's going to figure out a way to turn the piano music down. It's on me. That's on me. I just killed the pianist. There we go. Any thoughts that emerged in your small group discussions on the economic community before I invite Clark to share some thoughts? Anything that you learned that was surprising? Anything you disagreed with? Anything you wish was clearer? Any aspects that you would hope that would be included in the next 2028 revised social principles? Anything like that?
I think one of the things that came out of our discussion in regards to the first question on financial resources, a lot of people think, tithing is 10%
Yeah.
of the church, but I think it's changed in years that it might be 5% of the church, maybe doing 5% to all the ministries,
Yeah.
5% to women's shelters.
Right.
You're kind of spreading it out.
Yeah, so Jesse was saying that the paradigm of 10% as a tithe going to the church could be spread in many different ways, even beyond 10%. As I think the theology of stewardship that is part of this section is that all of it belongs to God. And it's not like 90% we control and 10% we can give. Remember Wesley's maxim? Earn all you can, save all you can, and then literally give all you can, which he did not say just give 10%. In fact, it was his personal goal in life that by the time he died, he did not own a single cent to his name, and as the story goes, when he died, he literally had given it all away. And so that's really the foundational principle here. 10% is the standard, but all of it belongs to God. So thank you for that, Jesse. That's a timely thing, since this Sunday we're beginning our generosity campaign, and it's a good way to remind you. You'll be getting your generosity packets in the mail next week, and so please look for your mail and for your estimate of giving card, which will be due in by November 16th. I was not going to say that, but Jesse prompted that out of me, so thank you very much for that. Anything else? Didn't expect to make a generosity pitch here. Yes?
We discussed about globalization.
Yeah.
Well, I personally feel globalization by buying way too much on Amazon, and should really go, put those monies towards local
Sure.
businesses and seek out local vendors and not just put more money in one person's food.
Right. So for the online folks, this was a comment on buy local, support your local vendors, support your local small businesses. The corporate global giants who have, in many ways, commandeered the product pipeline have taken on a large part of the inequity and injustice that takes place in certain parts of the world, including parts of our own neighborhoods. And so supporting local business owners and entrepreneurship can be an act of justice, as well as getting some really cool things from people here in our own area. So thank you for that. Someone on our online group said, when we were school kids, we talked about reuse, recycle, and they said it would be great if we added a third R. In fact, this is Susan Ryan who said this, if I can say that. She's online. She said, third R could be resist. Resist buying more than you need. No need to reuse and recycle if you didn't have too much to begin with. And so do you really need all of that stuff? So that's a really conscientious choice that you can make. So Clark, I didn't know you were going to be here in person. You were online last week, which was wonderful for the online folks. Even better for you to be here. And because you were on legislative committee too for Church and Society, would love for you to come up and offer any reflections you had on the revised social principles and the pieces that the part that you played. So thank you.
First of all, but before I get into any kind of substance issue, I really just need to express a deep word of gratitude to Magrey and to John and the Justice Committee at this church. And the reason that I say that is because sometimes when we talk about justice, it degenerates into wanting to just simply be on the side of the angels. And we're for this, and we're for that, and we're against the other. When the challenge of justice is not where you stand, the challenge of justice is how you put feet to your faith. It's about how you make a difference in the world with your witness, with your words, with your ability to build community and to organize and to find common purpose and to find ways where you're not just feeling very good and patting yourself on the back because you have the right position. I want to say a special word of thank you to Heidi Aspinwall, who has been the Mission and Justice Director here for the last how long have you been on staff, Heidi? 2? I can't believe it, 2 years. And for all of that team who are working, this resource that John was sharing is such a vital resource to help us do exactly that. So I want to kind of say that. Now, to the substance of the committees, let me just say that this was a very engaging process. And the reason why is, even though the results are amazing, I think I think the Board of Church and Society, with all their listening sessions, did an exceptional job at helping to bring together a document. But when we were in the middle of talking about such critical issues, for example, how do corporations use the financial resources that they have? And the question for United Methodist, sitting in that room having this discussion, was, do we divest ourselves, get rid of our resources around that deal with important issues, or do we stay invested so that we can have resolutions at board meetings to try to move the needle or not? And frankly, I found that to be a very rich discussion. And where we came down is that there are some places where we've noticed that by having these resolutions, we're having an impact on the corporations to help nudge them and move the needle. In some other places, though, it's like hitting your head up against a wall where year after year after resolution, where nothing ever happens. And so I think there was some good guidance in the economic community around the use of our financial resources. Our Board of Pensions, Magrey and I, and your other clergy. I mean, I'm now retired and rely on those pensions, and I'm very grateful for the generosity of the church. But we also use our position with those investments as a way to put feet to our faith, and I'm very grateful for that. And thanks for the opportunity to share with everybody. It was an honor to be elected by our peers and to be there representing Florida.
Just so serendipitous to have you here, Clark, to offer that inside view of what happened there. So the social community, we're going to round out our night here to talk about that large set of positions on the family, on our social connections, and of course human sexuality. We knew going into Charlotte last year that this was going to be the biggest change, not just in the social principles, but in the trajectory of our whole denomination. The United Methodist Church was founded in its current state in 1968. 4 years later, in the first ever social principles in 1972, there was a phrase that henceforth haunted LGBTQ persons and allies and the entire denomination, where the statement of the church was that homosexuality is incompatible with Christian teaching. That one statement had led to all sorts of discrimination, harm to churches and families, individuals, and people all around the world. And so we knew going into Charlotte that not only was it going to be important to strike that language from the social principles and the book of discipline, and not only was it going to be important to change our policies towards the ordination of gay and lesbian persons and the allowance of same-sex weddings, as well as the lifting of a ban of United Methodist funds to support LGBTQ persons, all of that. We knew that fundamentally we were going to have to talk about human sexuality from a foundational theological perspective. We're going to have to talk about marriage. And what was presented in the legislation for the revised social principles was a definition of marriage as being between two people of faith. That's it. Two persons of faith. And we knew that when we got to the floor of General Conference on May 2nd, so like the day before the end of this 12-day General Conference, we knew when that line got to the floor that it was going to generate a lot of debate, particularly, but not exclusively, from some members of the African Central Conferences who wanted to remain United Methodist, who voted for regionalization, but knew that in contexts like theirs and others around the world, where it was not only illegal, but under penalty of death, to not only be homosexual, but to advocate for homosexuality, they could not in good conscience vote for that kind of definition of marriage that did not say that it was between a man and a woman. So the vote coming out of legislative committee was 75% to 25% to move forward with 2 persons of faith. That was not enough to move it through a consent calendar, which would have eased it to approval. It was headed to the floor. It was headed to a floor debate of General Conference. And while we knew that there were some headwinds moving in the direction of inclusion from a lot of prior votes from the prior 10 or 11 days, this was going to be an interesting debate, and we didn't know how it was going to go. As Sharon is going to tell you here in the video in a moment, there was a crystallizing, unusual, surprising holy moment from the least expected source, a woman from the African Central Conference of East Zambia who spoke fluent English and offered an amendment to that line to amend or interpret marriage as not just being between 2 persons of faith. What she said was, and I want to read it directly here. Marriage is between one man, here we go. What she said was to offer what she described as a, quote, double-barrel definition of marriage. She moved to have the social principles read that within the church we affirm marriage as a sacred, lifelong covenant that brings 2 people of faith, to keep that, but in parentheses, an adult man and woman of consenting age and 2 adult persons of consenting age. It was that word "and" that turned into 45 long minutes of trying to be clear about what she was trying to say. Was she saying that marriage is between one man and one woman and 2 adult persons of consenting age, which one jokester was commenting on Twitter that would redefine the quadrilateral in some ways if marriage involved a man and a woman and 2 persons. God bless her. She spoke fluent English, but in the handwriting and in the nervousness of the moment and the generosity of the presiding bishop, it became clear that what she was trying to do and what she successfully eventually did was say "or." So let me read it again. 2 people of faith, an adult man and woman of consenting age, or 2 adult persons of consenting age into union with one another. What she wanted to do and what she successfully did in that moment is accommodate contextually the importance of differences of understanding marriage in different parts of the world. So that if you're from a Central Conference in Africa, you could say that the position here is a man and a woman. And if you are in, say, parts of the United States, you could say it is also between, or it is also between 2 persons of consenting age. That is why it reads the way it does in your revised social principles. So if you wonder why it has that sort of long excursus about defining 2 people of faith, it was because of that accommodation that allowed the Central Conferences in Africa to vote for it. And it eventually passed overwhelmingly. Now, there were some abstentions. There's like 170 people who were traditionalists who decided not to vote for it. But even if you count all of those abstentions as no votes, it still would have passed by like 65%. So at the end of the day, the voice of the denomination was clear, that we are moving toward a new age of full inclusion for those parts of our world, like many of our parts here in this country, who believe that it simply needs to be 2 consenting adults. So it's just one of the most dramatic moments I ever thought I would see in the General Conference. And Clarka, you probably would say the same thing. So what I want to do is show you about 5 minutes of this video where Reverend Dr. Sharon Austin, who's on Legislative Committee 2, talks about the social community.
Siblings in the mix of their struggle.
That was a lot. Esther, you really had a lot of work, and we We're just so grateful to you for your voice and your leadership. If this was your first general conference, I can't imagine what you'll do in future general conferences, so pretty remarkable. Church and Society 2 was tasked with, I think, what some might call the hot button issues. We had an opportunity to reflect on marriage and particularly same-sex marriage. And we never know where the gift, where the opportunity will come. And the proposal that actually helped us to vote in the affirmative for the sweeping change that was made was actually an amendment introduced by a delegate from East Zambia. Who would have known that a woman from East Zambia could make the difference, particularly because we've heard so much about our sibling delegates from the Central Conferences in Africa, and they are often erroneously depicted as being of one mind, and that mind being a mind that is very traditional. And so the amendment now affirms marriage as we often have thought of it, as a marriage between a man and a woman, but also now between two consenting adults. And so the language that has been more restrictive, defining marriage as only between a man and a woman, now is inclusive and invites people to enter into a covenant of marriage with persons whom they love and by whom they are loved. And so this was an incredible moment of celebration and a blessing to the church going forward and to those to whom we minister in the world. We also had the opportunity to reflect upon and remove the incompatible language from the discipline. And so we are aware that we have heretofore said that homosexuality, while all persons are created by God and are persons of worth and value, that homosexuality as a lifestyle is not compatible with Christian teaching. Well, now we have removed that language and you affirm that people are loved by God and that human sexuality is valued, it is affirmed, and people have the opportunity and even the call to live into who God has created them to be, to bless relationships across a spectrum. It's, again, a gift, and we had a chance to see it and celebrate it, to vote upon it in real time and in our own lifetimes. And it just has made an incredible difference to us. We also had the opportunity to witness the removal of language that has been so restrictive regarding the ordination of our gay clergy siblings. And so, again, the church now has opened wide the affirmation of what God has already done in this regard. And so God continues to call. Now we have a chance to get on board with what God has already and continues to do. So it gives me goosebumps to think about the celebrations, the tears, the hard work, the articulation, and the grief around our siblings who felt they could not remain in the church, but who are welcome to remain as long as we have the understanding now that we are all loved and all included by God and can live into our respective callings. This is not a mandate for people who have to leave the church. It is a way for us to openly live together in the ways that we have already sought to live together, and now with the full opportunity that all people have who are called by God with this.
I was privileged to serve on Church and Society
1. Yes, we already heard from you. Okay, So give you some time to look at the positions within social community. You'll see there's a lot. It's encompassing of a whole bunch of aspects of family life, social connections, homosexuality, of course, abortion. And like I said earlier, it is the human sexuality piece and the redefinition or the definition of marriage that was the biggest change. Many of the other positions were clarified, amplified, made much more critical and urgent, but not many wholesale changes. Let me skip to this. When it comes to faith, this is from John Wesley. When it comes to faith, what a living, creative, active, powerful thing it is. It cannot do other than good at all times. It never waits to ask whether there is some good which is to be done. Rather than before the question is raised, it has done the deed and keeps on doing. One who is not active in this way is a person without faith. And I already shared with you reflections last week on this idea that there is no holiness but social holiness. There is no individualized solo Christianity. We all need each other. We need our connection with each other. And that connection needs to be not only healthy, but holy in a way that honors the dignity and the humanity of all persons. So you have the section in front of you, the social community. I'm going to give you about, let's see. Oh, wow, time is drawing to a close. I'm going to give you about 10 minutes, okay? 10 minutes to look through those statements. See what jumps out at you in terms of what's interesting, provocative, maybe things you disagree with, and talk this through together, and then we'll wrap it up for the night, all right? About 10 minutes. And if you want some prompts, there are some questions here on the screen for you, all right? Sorry, Matt. I'm making Matt jump all over the chapel here. There we go.
Whoops. Ah. Oh. Yeah, that's not going to work. What if I do... Oh, shoot. Hold on 1 second, y'all. There we go. Hey, there we go. There I am. Cool. So y'all can see me and see the questions. That'll be nicer this time around. I need to change my headphone input real quick. There we go. All right, awesome. Looks like you guys had a great conversation with Magrey. Super excited that you guys were able to do that. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, cool. Awesome. Let me mute myself. Oh, I see. I'm hearing myself a little bit later through your guys' speakers. My bad. You may need to mute the web browser that has the live feed in it. Oops. Sorry. Can you guys mute your audio in that tab? I'm so sorry. I realize this is strange, and I might pull away from this. I won't do this again. Okay, so let's look at those questions that we have there. It's okay. I'm gonna get out of this. Hold on 1 second. I can fix this.
tackling, but anything provocative, interesting, insightful that you all talked about, anything that's missing, anything you would change from this section at all? And once again, welcome to all the online folks. Still holding strong at 20, Matt, we didn't lose a single one? That's amazing. We held on to 20 all night. And there's 30 of you, I think, by Heidi's count in here today. So we're just grateful for a group of 50 people talking about the social principles. How about that? So anything interesting, provocative, compelling, controversial that came up in your discussions? Yes? Was that a yes? Yes. Yes. All of those things. Oh, okay. Just a general yeah. Yeah, it was all controversial and all compelling, all provocative. All right. Anybody? You thought it was great that it's done in such detail. It really is. And then when you add what Dr. Austin referred to as the book of resolutions, like talk about getting granular. If you ever get a chance to get a copy of that gigantic book of resolutions, then it's totally comprehensive. We were going to kill tons of trees if we're going to do that. But yeah, John. Uh-huh. Yeah. That's right. That's right.
So there is, because my world is all about fighting against censorship.
Right, right.
There is representation.
Yeah. For those of you who don't know, John Milburn is like one of the points of the spear of Hillsborough County Public Schools in terms of the media centers and the books and the whole controversy that's around that. And so we are so grateful for the work that you are doing, and very much appreciative of your insight here, that the media, technology, education, information is an ethical matter. It always has been, but even more pronouncedly so. And so it is about freedom of speech, and it is about justice and equity. Who has access to that technology, as well as who has the say in what gets broadcast and what gets shown. Absolutely. Yes? Yeah, it's a great question. So how do the revised social principles get communicated through, as you said, the ranks of United Methodists? It is incumbent on every local church to make it a part of their congregational life and exploration. It does not rank at the same level as the Bible, right? And so we're not expecting people to do sermon series on the social principles at that level, but it's educational, it's instructive, it's persuasive. It is to guide the work and witness of a local church. It is to bridge the gap between what the Bible says, which is foundational, and what we're supposed to do with it. And so that's part of what we are supposed to do. Now, I will admit to you that venues like this and events like this are few and far between in terms of my ministry here. And so I'm so grateful that 50 of you have shown up for this, and this might become a catalyzing moment for more efforts like this. And that's what we'll talk about next week. Well, we'll talk about the political community for the first half of our class, which is the last section. And then John is going to facilitate the what's next. What can this church do? What can it be a part of? Given the clarity that's been given to us by the social principles, what can we do next? So this is all a reminder to read the last section. What a generous segue you just gave me, by the way. Meg, thank you for that. Read the last section on the political community, and we'll see you next week. But before we turn it over to you all, we'll recite the social creed to conclude. But John, I want to give you a minute or so. You asked for a minute at the end to offer some feedback, so we want you to do that.
As Magrey had mentioned, a lot of Methodists never even knew we had these, and that's a fault of some churches. Aren't you glad you're a member of a church that is willing to cover these? And I will tell you from experience, it is extremely rare for the pastor to speak about them from the pulpit. So we're blessed in that way that we have an entire ministry team that supports these efforts, not just learning about them, but now putting them into action through our social justice work and the portico and all of the other amazing things that this church does. There's a common phrase in Methodism that you've all heard: every person is of sacred worth, right? I'm honored to have served the past couple of years as a delegate to our annual conference here in Florida, and 2 years ago was Bishop Berlin's first year as a bishop. And if you have the opportunity, and maybe Magrey could give himself a Sunday off and invite the bishop to preach sometime, he is an amazing preacher. And in his first Episcopal address, he spoke about Wesley's experience in Kingswood, England, when his friend George Whitefield had asked him to come out and preach to the miners, which the Church of England didn't really worry about poor people back at the time. And in fact, in a journal entry, Wesley talked about how he had gone out there and made himself vile because he didn't preach in his robes and in the walls of a church, right? But over a couple of weeks of he and Reverend Whitefield preaching in a field to these miners, the crowd grew to like a couple thousand people, right? And that, I suspect, is a defining moment in John Wesley's life and ministry, right? He saw that happen. And so, you know, that conviction has shown up all over the place. And the social community stretches that truth, right, into every corner of our life, right, that every person is of sacred worth. It's our blueprint, this section particularly, for the beloved community, phrase we always hear. And so I just want to leave you with this question. What does it mean to protect another person's dignity when it costs you something? All right? Thank you.
Appreciate that, John. Once again, grateful to have you here. Thank you for the online folks. Let's conclude, like we will each of these sessions, with reciting together the social creed. Hopefully you can read it up here or in your document. Affirming these by saying together, we affirm the natural world as God's handiwork and dedicate ourselves to its preservation, enhancement, and faithful use by humankind. We joyfully receive for ourselves and others the blessings of community, sexuality, marriage, and the family. We commit ourselves to the rights of men, women, children, youth, young adults, the aging, and people with disabilities, to improvement of the equality of life, and to the rights. We believe in the right and duty of persons to work for the glory of God and the good of themselves and others, and in the protection of their welfare in so doing, in the rights to property as a trust from God, collective bargaining, and responsible consumption, and in the elimination of economic and social distress. We dedicate ourselves to peace throughout the world, to the rule of justice and law among nations, and to individual freedom for all people of the world. We believe in the present and final triumph of God's word in human affairs, and gladly accept our commission to manifest the life of the gospel in the world. Amen. Amen indeed. Thank you for coming, and we'll see you next week.
Hey, thanks so much for being here with us this week. for session 2 of the United Methodist Revised Social Principles. This recording will be available on YouTube, so if you're watching this after the fact, hopefully you skipped through all those awkward parts where you're trying to get Zoom set up. But if you're with us for the live event, thank you so much for joining us on Zoom, for asking your questions, for engaging in the chat. It's such a treat to be with you guys and be able to do this, to bridge this technology gap, to create these hybrid spaces for you all. It really is something that I think is at the intersection of something that is a calling for me and a gifting that I have when it comes to technology. So thank you all for giving me a space to be able to do that in. If you're watching this after the fact, I want to tell you just a smidge about Hyde Park United Methodist Church and who I am. I'm Matt Hotho, and I'm the Director of Production and Online Engagement here at Hyde Park. So I basically handle all the AV stuff, and I handle all of our online stuff. And if you haven't picked it up yet through our conversation on the social principles, Hyde Park is a warm-hearted, open-minded church. We're located in historic Hyde Park in Tampa, Florida, and we have a lot of different ways that you can connect with us, and you can learn about all those ways by going to hydeparkumc.org/next steps, where you can find small groups to join, different ways to learn about our church, and you can even join us for worship. Our online service is available on demand Sundays at 7 a.m. on YouTube, and then we live broadcast it at hydeparkumc.org/live and Facebook and YouTube at 9:30 and 11. And then you can join us in person for a 9:30 contemporary service in our Harnish Center and an 11 o'clock traditional service in our sanctuary. We also have a downtown campus, the Portico, and if you've got that friend who maybe doesn't want to attend a traditional church or maybe is looking for something a little bit different, the Portico just might be the thing for them. It's in downtown Tampa, and it's a place for conversation, connection, and community change. You can find out about all of that at hydeparkumc.org. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Matt Hotho, and I'll catch you guys next time.